What's up, YouTube? It's Chris from CDev Sports Cards, and we're back today with something a little different. First, a few announcements. I'd like you guys to like and subscribe. I always tell you to do it at the end. Today, we're going to tell you at the beginning. I don't know how many people actually make it to the end of the videos. So please like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated, as well as leaving comments. I appreciate interacting. I enjoy interacting with the community. I enjoy talking about sports cards and sports and anything else. If you ever see anything that I pull that you're interested in for trade or for sale, whichever you prefer, I'm not picky, hit me up in the comments. Let's start a dialogue, create conversations, let's make some trades. Another thing I wanted to do today was to shout out some other smaller YouTube channels that do similar things like this, open up sports cards, that I really enjoy watching. And if you enjoy my content, I think you would enjoy them too. Wildcard Rips is one of them. Van Slyke Fan Cards is one of them, named after Andy Van Slyke, a good player from the late 80s and early 90s. Another Pittsburgh fan. There's a lot of Pittsburgh content creators in the sports card game. Another one is Low Budget Rips with a Z. Low Budget Rips. That's basically what I do. Me and him open a lot of the same product, a lot of the same stuff. We try to rip on a budget. We don't have a lot of money, unfortunately, to spend in this hobby. If we did, we'd probably spend it on it, but, we have to budget what we do. And last is Card Curiosity. These are all great channels. You guys should definitely check them out and also give them a thumbs up and a subscription. It would be much appreciated. I had a comment last week to talk more about the wall. I told you about the wall at the beginning. It's my Hall of Fame wall. We have, one card from, the members of the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, graded. That's the goal of the wall. We need to expand the wall. The wall is now full, and we have to add more cards to it. That's something we will do in the near future. But somebody wanted me to actually go over the cards in the wall individually, so I thought we would do that today. So we'll start in the upper left. I got a glare on it, but it is an 1980 Topps Dennis Eckersley. Then we have a 77 Topps 4 Jim Rice. None of these are rookies, by the way. I'm going to do a separate wall for rookies. So these are all post-World War II Hall of Fame baseball players. Well, except for Pete Rose, but he should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a Pete Rose in a BVG 6. There's a Tony Perez 75 mini in a 5. Johnny Bench, 1980 Topps in a 6. George Brett on a 1977 Topps BVG 5. Phil Niekro, 69 Topps in a SGC 6. Jim Bunning in a 1960 Topps 4-5. 1970 Billy Williams in a 6-5. 1978 O-Pee-Chee Steve Carlton. I thought that was cool because it was an O-Pee-Chee, near mint 7. Mike Schmidt, 1977 Topps on a PSA or a SGC 6. 76 Topps Rod Carew on a 6-5. 73 Tom Seaver on a 6. 73 Steve Carlton. We have two Steve Carltons in a 6. So I got to take one of the Steves out. I didn't actually realize that. We'll take out the 78, even though it's an O-Pee-Chee. I like the older one better. 78 Topps Nolan Ryan in a 4. 74 Bob Gibson in an SGC 7. That's probably the highest grade in this whole case. 70 Yastrzemski in a 6. A 59 Topps Orlando Cepeda in a 4. A 1970 Topps Tony Oliva in a 3-5. A 75 Jim Palmer in a 4. A 1972 Rich Allen in a 5. A 72 Frank Robinson in a 6. A 72 Ted Simmons in a 6. I really like the 72 look, as you can tell. 72 Harmon Killebrew in a 3. A 75 Reggie Jackson, in a 3. 1970 Brooks Robinson in a 4. And down here we got Whitey Ford on a 3. Al Kaline on a 5-5. Willie Stargell on a 5. Willie Mays on a 4. Hank Aaron on a 3. That's 1964 Topps. Eddie Matthews on a 3, 64 tops. Ernie Banks, 1966 tops on a 4. The Clemente 7, which I showed you a few videos I got in the mail. And the Yogi Berra 3, which I also got in the mail maybe a month ago. So that's who's in there right now. Like I said before, I have some others to add to the wall, but I'm out of space. So we need to add another wall. But there's also guys that aren't up there that I don't have graded copies of. I do have some raw copies. So the thought process is, do I get these graded or do I keep hunting for graded copies of guys that I'm missing? Now, my issue with grading is that it's expensive. I heard PSA just raised their rates again. I don't know what that makes them now, $30 a card probably or something. I think they were $25 before. And you have to join the PSA club, which I have zero interest in doing. Last time I checked, SGC was like $22 a card. But like, you know, that would be like $400 to grade these 20 cards. And it's like, we're not doing it to make money. We're doing it to get a graded copy in the collection. I really wish there was some company that would do some sort of bulk deal for like $10 a card. I mean, especially like, what about the new, like, you know, I need your guys' help. Tell me down below, who should I grade with? Who's the best price per card option? Like, I'm not that picky about, like I said, these are not going to be resold. That's not the goal of this. So I just want them slabbed up, protected for life. That's all I want. So we're going to go over the raw copies today. We're going to look at them closely. And, you know, potentially these are grading candidates for either upgrades of cards in the wall or guys I don't have at all. They're all Hall of Famers except for a few. There's a couple that are just really nice, clean cards, and I'm curious what they would get. I put them in chronological order. So we'll start with this one. This is a 59 tops Whammy Douglas. Now, I don't know who Whammy Douglas was. I'm sure you don't either. But, I mean, if you look at this card, it's pretty well centered. This top right corner is a little soft, but that corner is pretty good. That corner is pretty good. I mean, for a 59, like, what are we expecting here? You know, and, like, there's the back. There might be a little staining in the upper corner. I don't know how much staining grades you down, to be honest. I saw this, and I couldn't believe how clean it looked on the scan, and it came to me, and I was honestly even more impressed. Like, my Orlando Cepeda got a 4, and it's terribly miscut. And the top corners are both soft, much softer than this. I mean, if I sent this to SGC, could this get like a 6 or 7? I mean, my Bob Gibson got a 7. It's more miscut than this. My Steve Carlton got a 6. It's way more miscut than this. I mean, I almost wonder if this is like a 7 or 8. And I know it's like, you know, a base card. But there are set collectors that pay good money for nice graded examples. I mean, if this was a 10, and don't get me wrong, this isn't a 10. But if this was a 10, I've seen common cards from this era sell for the tens of thousands of dollars. Graded 9s or 10s because set collectors want to have the highest graded set in the registry. All right, so yeah, you guys tell me down below what you think about Whammy Douglas. Next is a guy I do not have in the collection at all graded. It's an all-star card, but he's one of those guys that was kind of, you know, phasing out when sport, you know, Top started making cards in 52. What, Bowman started in 50 or 49? Like, Stan had already been in the league 10 years by then. I believe he served in World War II. So, like, 59 was kind of toward the end of Stan's career. You can see it's definitely miscut. It's a little heavy on the right. Maybe a little heavy on the bottom. I actually think it's pretty good on the top to bottom. You can see the corners, you know, they're not great. This is a 1959, but they're also not terrible. And there's the back. You know, also miscut a little bit. It's a little heavy on this side. But, I mean, that's pretty clean. I think that could get like a 5 or a 6. I don't see why not, based on what I'm looking at on my wall, you know, to compare it to, unless They've gotten more stringent. But yeah, I think I could get a 5 or a 6. Next is the big one. And, it's got soft corners. I'm not going to lie. But it is a Mickey Mantle. This is my only vintage Mickey Mantle. And if you guys have ever looked into buying any vintage Mickey Mantle, on eBay, they routinely approach $100. I picked this up for like $65, $70. So I didn't think that was that bad. I know the corners are soft. The corners are terrible. I'm not going to lie. But it is pretty well centered. It's a little heavy on the top, but left to right is pretty good. There's the back. Maybe a little bit of staining over here. It looks like, I can't really tell if that's the design, if that's just, what happens over time. All 4 corners are soft, though. So I don't know. Probably like a 2, maybe a 3. I mean, the color's nice. The photo's good. The centering's good. I don't know. How much do they grade for 4 dinged corners? Do you guys have any graded cards with 4 dinged corners that you can use to, give me an idea of what this would go for? But, I still kind of liked it. 60 Mickey Mantle All-Star card. Next, 1968 or 1960 Topps Luis Aparicio, and I do not have any Luis Aparicio graded. If you look around, like on eBay, there's not a lot of his graded. He is a Hall of Fame player, but he was like a light-hitting defensive stalwart second or shortstop. So he doesn't really get a ton of hobby love, and he played for the Chicago White Sox, who were not a very good team back then. So, then I think he also went on to like the Orioles and some other not so good teams back then. So he's not very appreciated in the hobby in terms of grading. Like, grading examples come far and few between. But I found this raw copy of Luis Aparicio, and once again, it's pretty nicely centered. You can see corners. They're a little soft, but they're better than the Mantle. There's a hair in there. Let's get rid of the hair. They're a little soft, but they're definitely better than the Mantle. There's the back. Once again, there's like a little bit of like brown degradation. I don't know if that's degradation or staining or if that's normal or if they downgrade for that or not. You can see this corner here is a little softer on the back than the other ones. But still, I think that's a pretty nice Luis Aparicio. And I think that could get like a 5 or 6. I don't see why that couldn't get a 5 or 6. Tell me in the comments down below what you guys think about these grades. Like I said, I've never graded. I'm just grading it based on the wall and cards that I have behind me and things that, got 5s and 6s and how they compare. Here's another 1960 Topps, Richie Ashburn. I did have a graded Richie Ashburn, but I looked at it and it actually had a crease in it, and I didn't really like it. I think it was like a 3 or a 4. But there was a visible crease, and I didn't like it. So I found this raw copy, and if you look at this raw copy, this is pretty clean. It might be a little heavy on the right, and maybe a little heavy. No, top to bottom, I think looks pretty good. Maybe a little heavy on the right, but you can look at the corners. That's a sharp corner for a 1960 Topps card. That's not bad either. I mean, and I don't really see any of the brown degradation on the back. Maybe a little miscut top to bottom. This side has a little more white than this side. I'm sorry, left to right. Top to bottom, it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, that seems to be like a pretty clean Richie Ashburn. I don't see why that couldn't get a 7. Maybe even an 8. Next is a guy also that I do not have on the wall. The Duke Snider. This is 61 Topps. This set was featured in this year's archives. Once again, it's a pretty well-centered copy. You can argue maybe it's a little heavy on the left. Top to bottom looks pretty good. If you look at the corners, those aren't bad. They're pretty sharp, I would say. I mean, maybe that one on the bottom is a little soft. You can see it's rounded a little bit. And maybe that top right one's rounded a little bit. There's the back. The back is actually really clean. Maybe a little heavy on the bottom. And a little heavy on the left to the right. Looked like maybe there was a crease in that corner, but I don't think so. So yeah, 61 Topps Duke Snider toward the end of his career, but I don't know. That seems like pretty clean. I don't see why that couldn't get a 5 or 6. This is a really nice, minus the cut. You can tell it's a little bit of a diamond cut. It's thinner down here, and then it gets thicker as it goes up. And it's thinner up here and gets thicker as it goes down. And it's thicker on the top than the bottom. So the cut's terrible. But look at the corners on this. Like, that's like pack pulled fresh 65 tops. And I see there's a little printing blemish right there. But, I mean, those are really sharp corners. There's the back. I mean, you can see a little bit of chipping along the blue edge here. There's, you can definitely see the corner there in the back. And a little bit down there, but that corner is pretty strong. And that corner is pretty strong for, a blue background. So, I don't know if I have another diamond cut that's been graded, honestly. I didn't look that closely. I mean, the Clemente is a little bit of a diamond cut, but it's a BCCG, so I don't know if that's a good comparison. Maybe that Jim Palmer 4 is just heavy right to left. The Pete Rose in a 6 is definitely diamond cut. So maybe this could get a 6. That's from Beckett. So maybe like a 5 or 6 on the Marischal. I do not have a graded Marischal. I have a lot of raw Marischals for a reason, but I thought that was the nicest one. And I kind of liked the color and the design. So a Marischal, maybe a 5, 6. Next is another guy I do not have on the wall, Don Drysdale. But once again, it's a pretty nicely centered card. It's a little heavy on the right. It's a little heavy on the top. But like eye appeal wise, it doesn't look that bad, I don't think. Bottom corner is a little soft, Top corners are definitely better. That one's got a little staining on it. There's the back. Once again, with a green background, you can really see it doesn't have a lot of side chipping, though. So that's nice. A little bit of white on that corner. A little bit of white on that corner. But, I think that's a pretty solid Don Drysdale. I don't see why that couldn't get like a 4 or a 5. Next is Bill Mazeroski from 69. I do not have a graded Mazeroski. He's one of those guys that's also very difficult to find graded copies of. He was once again, a defensive stalwart, like a 10-time Gold Glove winner, maybe more. But, he wasn't a great bat. He wasn't. We can look at his stats. He's a career 264 hitter with 124 homers. He had 1,600 hits at this point in his career. And on this time, he had won the Gold Glove 8 times. I'm pretty sure he won it like 10. So a very good defensive player. But once again, defensive players don't get a lot of hobby love. And there's not too many graded copies of Bill Mazeroski. This is a 68? Yeah, 68 tops. A lot of these 68 tops are really beat up, I've noticed, when I look at them online. Like, you can see a lot of the chipping on the edges. But if you look at this is really sharp. Like, look at that corner. Look at that edge. Like, I know it's miscut. It's heavy on the right. It's heavy on the top. But, like, edges and corners for a 68 tops, this is actually phenomenal. There's the back. It looks definitely more centered on the back. Like, I don't know. How much do they penalize you for centering on a year where, like, a lot of them are really beat up? I don't have any 68 tops in the wall because, like I said, a lot of them are beat up and they don't grade well. But this Mazeroski is pretty nice. Could this get an 8? A 7? I don't know. I feel like this is a 7 or an 8. Like, depending on how much you're going to, penalize me for the little bit of miscut. Other than that, it looks pretty good. I'm not sure if that's a printing blemish up there in the corner, and I'm not sure how much they ding down for, like, printing blemishes, but... So maybe a printing blemish, maybe a 6, 7, maybe 8's a little high, maybe a 6, 7. But yeah, pretty nice copy of Mazeroski. Next is another 68 All-Star selection, Bob Gibson. Same thing, it's got the wood grain border, so it shows all the chipping and like the rough edges. But if you look, corners are pretty sharp, Edges look pretty good. That corner is a little soft. But it seems fairly nicely centered. Top to bottom is good. Left to right, maybe the right's a little heavy. It's kind of hard to tell because of the Sporting News like logo design. There's like the thinnest, and that's probably a little thinner than that side. But the color's good, you know, it looks nice. The back's kind of hard to grade because it's part of a puzzle piece. You can definitely see this corner up here is a little soft. You know, the one on the bottom is a little rounded. But, you know, Bob Gibson All-Star. I think that's a solid 5.6. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I do have a Bob Gibson already. It's a 7, so I probably wouldn't grade this. This is older, though. This is a 68. Maybe I would. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. What do you think this Bob Gibson could get? Tell me in comments down below. Next is a Don Sutton. We do not have a graded Don Sutton. I found this one. This is a very early Don Sutton. As you can tell, look how young he looks there. But, I mean, look at this card. It might be perfectly centered for a 1970 tops or 69 tops. I mean, look at it. Left to right, that looks about the same size to me. Top to bottom, maybe it's a tad heavy on the top. Just a little bit, though. And then, you know, we'll look at the corners. That's pretty sharp. That's pretty sharp. I mean, those are all corners with a point. There's the back with a pink background. You can see a little bit of chipping on the edges here. But, you know, for a full-colored pink background, there is not a lot of chipping either. This is a 69 tops Don Sutton. It's like his second or third year. But to me, this is really clean. I think this is at least a 7. I think this could get an 8. You know, and that's why I do want to send these off. Like, these will be better graded copies than the cards that I have now. Like, I went through all my vintage and found the nicest, cleanest ones that I think are going to be better than the ones I have now or are better than the ones that I could buy. Now, here's another Mazeroski, and this is another, like, you know, notorious set for being hard to grade. With the black, it chips so bad. Now, you can see some little chipping in this corner, but it is a corner. Little chipping in that corner. That corner is pretty solid, and there's a little chipping in that corner. It's definitely a little heavy top to bottom, but left to right is pretty much spot on. This is 1970 tops. I'm sorry, 71 tops, 71 tops. The back, you know, I don't know if this is better or worse than the other Mazeroski copy. It's probably a little worse. It's probably like in that 5.6 range, but I wonder if it's because of the black border, if they, like, you know, take that into consideration and maybe give it like a little bit of a bump, because that is a really clean 71 tops. You guys go out there and look for 71 tops cards online, you know, on eBay or wherever, and you won't find many that are this, because there's a little bit of chipping, you know, right there on the edge, you can see it, but like no chipping, you know, a little bit of corner wear showing, but not much for a 1971 tops. So we'll probably grade the other Mazeroski, but I thought that one was pretty nice. Next is a 72 Fergie Jenkins. We do not have a Fergie Jenkins. Now, what I noticed about this one right away is for 72 tops, this is pretty well centered. A lot of my 72 topses are not centered at all. It might be a little bit of a miscut. It might be a little thinner down here than up here. But like border space left to right is about the same, and border space top to bottom I feel is about the same. Corner-wise, you know, it's not perfect. They're not sharp corners, but I wouldn't necessarily call them rounded corners either. You know, they're somewhere in between. There's definitely, no, that's just on the case. Definitely a little miscut on the back, a little heavy on the bottom, and a little heavy on the right. But I do not have a Fergie, so this would be, you know, added to the collection. I don't see why this couldn't get a 5. I think this is a solid candidate for that 5.6 range, which is kind of like what I was kind of aiming for when I started, was mostly 5s and 6s. I had to buy lower grades than some of the bigger players like Ernie Banks and Eddie Matthews and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and Yogi Berra, just because I didn't want to spend $50 a card. I was trying to get them done for like 20 to 25 or less. Next up, Raleigh Fingers. I do not have a graded Raleigh Fingers. This is early Raleigh Fingers before he had the mustache. I'm sure you don't even recognize him. I didn't necessarily recognize him at first. I thought it was an air card. Little heavy on the right. Maybe also, again, a diamond cut. I'm not really sure. Top to bottom, maybe a little heavy on the bottom. I don't know. It doesn't look bad. Corners, I mean, it's got a corner. It's got a corner. That one there is a little rounded. But that one's pretty sharp. There's the back. Once again, definitely a little heavy on the right. Top to bottom, though, looks pretty good. This is like a 4th year Raleigh Fingers. So, yeah, Raleigh Fingers. Next is a McCovey. Now, I do have a McCovey, but it's going to go in the rookie box. I actually bought a rookie Willie McCovey. It's pretty beat up. It's an SGC, like 1.5. But this is a very clean McCovey. Once again, it's very well centered, maybe a touch heavy right to left. Top to bottom, maybe a touch heavy on the top. But the corners, once again, are pretty good. You know, there's no visible, like, edge wear that you can see. Once again, black back on the back, but, you know, there's no real chipping on the edges. It does show that the corners are a little dinged. This top right actually probably looks the worst of them all. But, you know, once again, do they give you a break because of the black background? I got a BCCG7 in the Clemente, and this is much more well centered. I don't think I have any other 73s up there. I do not. But I don't see why this couldn't get like a 6. I think that's a solid candidate for a 6. 2 more to go. This would be an upgrade. We have a Jim Palmer. We have a 75 Jim Palmer. But the 75 Jim Palmer is painfully off-centered, like, you know, to the naked eye. Like, it doesn't have good eye appeal. This has better eye appeal. Once again, it's pretty well centered. Maybe a little heavy on the left. Top to bottom looks pretty good. That corner is a little soft. There might even be a little crease in it. That corner is a little soft. It's not really a corner. A little rounded. That one's pretty good, though. Once again, black back. We have a little bit of whitening over here on this part. You know, that corner. There's a little bit more edging on this one. But, you know, I think I could get a 5. I mean, it has really good visual appeal from the front. Like I said, from the back, because of the black background, you can see a little more damage. Maybe it's a 4 or 5, but it's better visually appealing than the one I have now. So, Jim Palmer. And then last but not least, another guy I do not have on the wall is a Gary Carter. This is a 2nd-year Gold Cup Gary Carter. Maybe a little heavy on the right, but it looks pretty well centered. Maybe a little heavy on the top. But corners are very nice for a 76 tops. There's the back. Once again, a little heavy on this side compared to that side. Top to bottom, though, looks pretty good. But I do not have a Gary Carter. I don't see why that couldn't get a 6 or 7. So, yeah, there's the cards that I need to send off for grading. You guys tell me down below in comments what's the best grading company for my buck. Like I said, I don't really care what it, I don't really care what it looks like. I have a mix of here of BCCG, BVG, SGC, PSA. I'm not against Tag or any of the other new graders per se either. This isn't necessarily for resale, except for maybe that Whammy Douglas at the beginning. It's basically just for my collection. So tell me down below in comments what's the best grading company to use, bang for the buck wise. Appreciate you guys watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You guys have yourselves a great night. Chris out.